This Pick and Save is the only grocery store in our immediate area.
The Pick and Save on North 35th Street isn't just a store.
It is the only source of food that this community has access to.
It's a lifeline.
Devastating.
And soon, it will be gone.
It's going to be not only a financial burden, but a burden on the spirit and the stomach.
It's one of 5 Milwaukee area Pick and Saves shutting its doors.
It's hard to hear that such a prominent chain in Milwaukee is closing down so many stores.
Jessica Thompson is a part of the Milwaukee Food Council.
I think the solution would be to move towards a food system that doesn't rely on these big grocery chains for our daily needs.
Brittany Taylor lives a...
I'm gonna use a word that a lot of people don't like being used, and it's a word that is often exaggerated, implied in areas where it doesn't exist, but it is a real thing that actually does exist. And the word is communism. And when you try to tell people about communism, it becomes like this old tale of the Soviet Union and the Cold War, and those days are over. We don't have to worry about communism. Communism is not a thing. Despite there being the Chinese Communist Party that exists, and Cuba is still a communist nation, and a litany of other communist organizations that do exist throughout the world. But also within the United States, there are communist organizations that do exist here. And it's hard for normal people to understand how communists operate within our country. But the biggest thing is how communists are using Black Americans for leverage to get the things that they ultimately want.
$9 billion increase over the previous year, and they can't keep a few stores open in the neighborhoods that need them the most. You know, if this were a real system that served the actual interests of people, there would be an exit tax on Kroger for pulling out like this. But instead, they can give 18 days notice and say, yeah, we're going to be out of here. Everybody that works here out of a job, everybody that depends on the grocery store for their food, for their medication, for their supplies. It's too bad. Food is a right. It is not a privilege. Everybody needs it.
There's a former KGB officer by the name of Yuri Bezmenov. It's old classic footage from, I think it was probably back in the 80s, of him talking about, maybe it was the 90s, I can't remember exactly, but it was him talking about the different steps to implement communism in a particular nation. But there's one in particular that's really important, and there's a phase called demoralization. And demoralization is the slow breakdown of institutions, trust, the things that are normal. All of those things slowly break down. It's just one thing after another, chisels away. And then from these different aspects of demoralization becomes the demand for communism, or at least becomes the gateway for communism to enter as a solution for a particular country. We are, in many ways, in the phase of demoralization. We have been, I would go as far back as saying, for sure, since 2020.
So, on the stage of demoralization, obviously there are tendencies in each society, in each country, which are going to opposite direction from the basic moral values and principles. To take advantage of these movements, to capitalize on them, is the main purpose of the originator of subversion. So we have religion, we have education, we have social life, we have power structure, we have labor relations, unions, and finally we have law and order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? These are the areas of application of subversion.
It was the perfect opportunity. You have the pandemic, you have economic strife, you have all these things happening. But, once again, the linchpin was George Floyd. The linchpin was to use a particular cause to advocate for certain things that would ultimately demoralize a particular community, a city, or a nation. And that's what they did with George Floyd's situation. So this is not about George Floyd, whether he was wrongfully killed or anything like that. This is about using a moment for the communist agenda.
We don't have a lot of grocery stores in black and brown neighborhoods. Metcalf Park is in the center of Milwaukee that connects to various neighborhoods.
Melody McCurtis is the deputy director for Metcalf Park. She says the closest grocer with a pharmacy is more than 3 miles away.
So folks can't walk to another grocery store. They're going to have to take a bus. They're going to have to get an Uber, get a ride to the grocery store if they don't have a car.
Alderman Russell Stamper, who represents the district, says he's going to look at funds for a grocery store during the city's budget cycle. Local and state officials at the meeting say they reached out to Pick and Save personally, and in an emailed reply, Pick and Save suggested people impacted try free prescription delivery for the remainder of the year. The company also suggested grocery delivery, offering a 30-day trial. But the people here say that doesn't solve the problem.
Folks are also talking about starting multiple co-op grocery stores.
And none of this is by accident. They didn't just wake up communists one day with a plan. They always had a plan. And they always had particular agendas. And they had areas which on the surface sound nice. But ultimately, they want to demoralize the system. So you have the defund the police agenda. Well, what is that about? Well, you ask them on the surface, in public, they'll say, well, this is about taking a more community-oriented approach to policing. It's not about defunding the police. It's about reallocating the funds to areas that benefits the community. Oh, yes, because they're very good at propaganda.
The message hitting the streets now left on this Madison Street. But what does defund police mean?
It does not mean that police are completely abolished. What we're saying is we need to invest in the things that actually make communities safer.
Protesters promote a petition asking for a 10% cut to MPD and instead put that money into the African American community for things like education. The ACLU of Wisconsin and other groups demand a $75 million cut, and that money spent on public health and housing.
What really prevents crime is resources, prevention. By the time you call the cops, that's too late. If you call the cops, that trigger was pulled, that window was smashed. Let's get to a point in our society where we can focus on prevention, not punishment.
These two state lawmakers have joined the daily protests and are looking at Milwaukee Police's...
They're very good at saying things that sound nice, sound innocent. But what does it ultimately mean? Well, it means that there are less money to go to police officers in communities that need it the most. Why do they need it the most? Because there's more criminal activity that's there. And over, these particular communities ask for more policing. Why? Because every person cares about their safety. And if there are community terrorists running around your neighborhood who are hurting people, it's kind of important that you have police there to stop them, to at least arrest them, maybe even prosecute them. So you have the defund the police effort to remove police officers from the field, to disincentivize, can't even say the word, disincentivize people from becoming police officers, right? Make it unattractive. Who wants to become a police officer, right? You have all these different aspects of making policing harder, having less police officers, encouraging police officers who maybe have been police officers for a decade or so, or maybe they've been past the point where they could retire with their pension and they were still working. Now they're saying, you know what, I'm done, I'm over it. And they're leaving. So you have the rate of new hires decreasing. You have the rate of police officers who are now choosing to retire or to go elsewhere doing that. So what does that result into? Demoralization. Community demoralization. There are less police officers to police the community, which means that for the very small percentage of community terrorists that exists, for the bad actors, for the thieves, for the gangbangers, for all these different people that exist in a particular neighborhood, there are less people to catch them.
More news now. When Milwaukee names a new police chief, that person may have to face some big challenges when it comes to staffing. That after the Common Council today rejected a nearly $10 million grant for 30 new officers. But after a vote, a motion was made to reconsider, so the council will take it up again next month, so it's not totally dead. If today's decision stands, though, the department will lose 150 officer positions through attrition next year.
there are less people to stop them, and those petty crimes, those small crimes, become less of an importance to actually go after them. I mean, realistically, if you get a call for a shoplifting event, or you get a call for a domestic violence event, which one do you think the cop is going to choose? Or the dispatcher is going to choose? If there's a shooting that's going on, or some old lady got her car broken into, which one do you think they're going to choose? And all those little moments of demoralization that happen because there are less police officers, all of those moments are going to add up.
That Darrell Brooks was accused of running over the mother of his child with his car. So how was he able to get out of jail a week and a half later? Darrell Brooks paid a $1,000 cash bond to get out of jail just 10 days before he allegedly drove his car through the Waukesha Christmas parade, killing 6. Something Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm called inappropriately low. Defense attorney Julius Kim of Kim and Lavoie agrees it was not a high enough bail.
In terms of setting bail, all domestic violence cases are kind of a crapshoot, in all honesty, because it's hard to figure out when someone may do something incredibly drastic later on down the line.
The prosecutor in Brooks's Milwaukee County case recommended the $1,000 bail. The I-Team combed over all of this ADA's 2021 domestic abuse cases and found dozens of cases where bail was set under $1,000, including 45 felony cases. We also found 16 cases where the recommended bond was over $5,000.
As I was watching this video, I'm looking at who the news is putting on the screen, and I see a girl with a septum piercing and pink hair, and it says she's part of or associated with the Food Council. And I thought to myself, what the hell is the Food Council? What exactly do they do? What does the Food Council do? And I started going down this rabbit hole about food councils. Like, is that a thing? And apparently it is. Food councils are all over the country in various cities. And they get away with a lot because they are, in many cases, technically volunteers. They're volunteers. We're not paying them any money. They don't need our money, right? So why make a big deal about a volunteer advisory board? Well, it's because they're an advisory board, and it's about who they have the ear of. That's what's important. And for many of these people, they have the ear of mayors, city council, right? And they put in recommendations. They become sort of the food experts of a given city. And on the surface, it sounds good until you start looking at the language. Equitable food. What does that mean? How do you make food supply equitable? Well, that means that you would have to control it. And so the aspect of equitable food within a given city is all about control.
Power structure. Okay, the natural bodies of administration, which are traditionally either elected by people at large or appointed by elected leaders of society, are being actively substituted by artificial bodies. The bodies of people, groups of people, whom nobody elected. Never. As a matter of fact, most of the people don't like them at all, and yet they exist. Power structure slowly is eroded by the bodies and groups of people who do not have neither qualification nor the will of people to keep them in power, and yet they do have power. Okay.
So let's backtrack a little bit. Demoralization. First, you have less police officers. You have an emphasis because police are racist. All they want to do is hurt black people and so on and so forth. And you know what? If we just had more mental health specialists, if we had more rules about not being able to use certain things that would possibly kill people, right? If we just made their job harder, then there would be less police officers. So now there are less police officers. What happens when you have less police officers? The criminals that do exist increase. The other aspect, too, of the defund the police is prosecution, because the vast majority of people are not criminals. It's only a few. But that few, if they can just go into jail and come back out over and over and over, where are we actually showing them any sort of consequence? If it's just a revolving door into jail and coming back out, and they can do it over again, what's to stop them from doing it? And while that is happening, crime is increasing because they have more access to do it. Because you have the DAs who want to throw out charges, the DAs who want to give them soft penalties, who don't want to say like, hey, this is the 10th time you've done this and we've caught you. You're going away for quite some time as a harsh penalty because we need to get you off the streets. They don't want to do that, right? Because they want to be equitable, right? Because they see Black people as these perpetual victims. Meanwhile, these are the people that are oppressing the very community they claim to care about. These are the local terrorists that they claim to, these are the local terrorists of a particular community that they claim to care about. So you have less police, you have soft punishments for the criminals that exist. Part of the criminality that exists is violence. A neighborhood becomes more dangerous, less people want to be there, including businesses, so businesses close up shop. You have an increase in shoplifting. So the increase in shoplifting for a given business, including a grocery store, increases. So what does a business do, especially a large chain? They say, all right, we'll take our toys and go home, and we'll go elsewhere. So they close up shop. And ultimately, throughout this chain reaction, who gets affected? Especially in a Black community, which is the target for these communists. It's the people that live there. It's the innocent Black people that live in these predominant Black neighborhoods. So where does the communist angle come in? Because the communists are the ones who have been involved all the way through. They may call themselves progressive, right? They may lighten their voices and say they claim to care about, but it's the words that they use that signifies who they are. When they talk about equitable, and then you follow up with the word that's next to it, how do you make food equitable? What does equitable mean? It means that everyone has the exact same opportunity, the exact same access. They love using the word access. Well, how do you guarantee everyone gets the same exact thing, the same exact outcome? Someone has to control it. That's how you get it. But in a free society, there is no guarantee. I may have more access to food than you do. It's what it is. And life is not fair. We learned that when we were children. But for these people, they want everything to be equitable, allegedly. So that's when they say equitable. When they use these particular buzzwords, it is not about advocating for a community. It is about control. It is about demoralization so that one day they can input their theology into actual practice. And that's what we're seeing today. We're watching the steps of increased crime, soft penalties from progressive DAs. We're seeing businesses and community members saying, we don't feel safe here, we're going to move. Then you start seeing in different pockets where you have, let's say, the grocery store, where the communists who already have the ear of the elected officials, remember these are unelected people who have the ear of people in power, they say, you know, it's our advice that we find a way for the government to fund this. Oh, so now we have government-funded grocery stores. And okay, maybe you're saying, we would never have that. Well, guess what? We actually have that.
Shoppers come to check off their list and buy groceries for the week. Protein, vitamins, fresh fruits and vegetables.
Now they have nothing. There is nothing. I walked in and I'm like, okay, where's all the food?
Michelle Randolph has been shopping here for years.
The milk, I'm scared to buy some. Even the dates that may have a few days over, I don't want to buy that.
Every aisle is like a ghost town. The chips are gone, the meat is gone, the cheese and yogurt are gone. Even the frozen section has more frost than food.
It used to be packed when it first opened, back in a couple years back.
For months, food has been purchased and not replaced by the store.
Probably 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah, it's just too much for me, if you ask me.
A smell greets customers at the entrance.
It's a rancid odor or something. I think something dead or something that's went bad.
In 7 years, the store has had 2 operators, for-profit and now non-profit.
There's nothing on the shelves.
After bonds, building loans, ordinances, and shortfall transfers, taxpayers have invested nearly $29 million in the store.
All that money is just going to waste.
Kansas City police and private security are on site to keep the area safe.
All the other 2 Sunfreshes had food. Why does this one not?
Right now, people wish they could pay the prices and take home some food.
It just needs to get better.
They essentially blew up what we knew and then said, I can build you a new one. The arsonist wants to put out the fire. Should you trust the arsonist at that point? No, you shouldn't. But that's the game. The game is demoralization. They're going to use Black Americans to do it. Why? Because there is this racial reflex with seeing Black people as unfortunate, as constant victims. And some of that is true throughout history, but that doesn't mean that you should have carte blanche with doing whatever you want in our name, in our image. But that's exactly what's happening. It happens throughout politics. If you want to build a past these days, well, just say it hurts Black people or it helps Black people. That's the narrative. And it sounds good on the surface, right? They're looking out for us. But if you look beyond the surface, it does absolutely nothing to help. 9 times out of 10. It is something that benefits a corporation, it benefits a particular politician, it benefits the media, it benefits all these other people except for the very communities that they claim to help. And in a situation like in Milwaukee or in Kansas City, you have people who can't get food. Why? Because of failure of government listening to the communists or the communists who are within these city councils. Because I haven't even gone into who are the people part of these city councils who are listening to a volunteer food council. What do these people know anything about food? Well, they know about diversity. They know about equity. They know about all these different buzzwords. But what do they know about food supply? Should the government be managing the food supply in that aspect? This isn't food inspection. It's not the FDA. This is managing supply. This is managing where the food comes from, how we get more food for people. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work because the margins for any sort of grocery store is between 1% and 3%. Is incredibly tight margins. But then you have people within the government who rant and rave about price gouging with food, as if grocery stores are these massive money makers, and they're not. If you run a particular grocery store right, you make between 1% and 3% in profit. It's not a whole lot margin-wise. So which means that they have a lot to lose if it doesn't go well. There's a lot of risk, which is why it becomes worth it for them to shut down a store and go elsewhere because they're losing money because everyone keeps stealing from them. Ask yourself, if you lived in a particular neighborhood and every day someone breaks into your apartment and steals your stuff, would you keep buying stuff and put it in your apartment? No. Eventually, you get tired of it and you leave. All of this is a game. All of this is a game for the communists that exist. If you watch that footage, you'll see a man in a red shirt. Who's that man in a red shirt? That man in a red shirt is with the Communist Party. The news media has him on television, stand there holding a sign. Meanwhile, he has a shirt for a political party that is explicitly communist. So when I say that the communists are in on this, this is not hyperbolic. They are destructive, and they don't have to pay for the consequences of their destruction. They get to play experiments in poor and black neighborhoods and then go home to the suburbs and sleep at night and be comfortable. They get to defund the police within the urban areas and then go out of the city and be comfortably fine and they get private security for their neighborhoods. See, in their part of the city, everything is fine. You guys, on the other hand, well, you know what, maybe we need to do something innovative, different for the poor blacks across the tracks. That is how they treat black people within America. The communists are not black Americans' friends. But unfortunately, there are a lot of black people who have yet to realize that. They hold up their fist, but they don't realize what this fist actually indicates. It is not by accident. It is a communist fist. It is not a black power fist. It's always been a game. It's always been about using black Americans to further a communist cause. So it's not hyperbolic when you say that the communists are very much so invested in what the black Americans do, because they are.